So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about failure, and one of my favourite quotes on failure is that there's no such thing as failure, there's only feedback, and it's what we do with that feedback that determines how successful we're going to be. And when we fail, there's three things we can do. We can decide that it's too difficult and quit, which is really the only true failure. We can decide to ignore the feedback that we've been given and just try again with the same approach. But when we do that, we're flirting with madness, because to do the same thing over and over and expect a different outcome is one of the definitions of madness. The last thing we can do is we can learn from that failure, we can adapt our approach, and we can try again. And this is an approach that I've heard a lot of people talking about over the past 2 days. And when you look at things like Thomas Edison, 10,000 attempts to create a longer lasting light bulb, and then you've got WD-40. How many people know WD-40? Anybody know what it stands for?
Water something.
Brilliant. WD-40. It stands for water something. So WD-40 is water dispersal Formula 40. First 39 didn't work. James Dyson, 5,000 attempts at creating the Cyclone vacuum cleaner before he finally got that right, and then went on to make billions. But that type of failure is experimentation, it's iterative advancements. That's not the kind of failure that I want to talk about. The kind of failure I want to talk about is that catastrophic kind of failure. The kind of failure you don't want to learn about by doing yourself. Things like skydiving and the parachute not opening. That's not a failure we want to learn from. We want to learn from these kind of catastrophic failures from other people and be able to look and see what went wrong and then apply those learnings so that we can avoid those failures. And that's what FAST's about, so that's what I want to share with you. I became passionate about this because for a few years I had a lot of failure myself. When I went to university, my first year, chemical engineering, failed that. Then moved to do mathematics, got through the first year okay, second year, failed that. And then when I finally graduated from mathematics, I got a job as a production manager, and one of my jobs in that, one of my roles in that job was to increase operational performance, which is surround fitting. And in the first 6 months, I actually improved operational performance by 300%. And I had a review meeting with my boss, and I went into that meeting expecting one of three things to happen. One, I'm going to get promoted because I was only the junior production manager. Two, I'm going to get a whopping great bonus. Or three, I'm going to get a moderate pay rise and told to go and do it again. And when I was in that meeting, he said to me, "Sit down, Gordon, because we're going to have to let you go." But I've trebled productivity. He said, "I understand that, but we've run out of work. We have to put the factory onto a 3-day week, and we have to let 50% of the people go." Which for me was a little bit of a catastrophic failure. So I became passionate about understanding what failure was, because if we can avoid failure, it's going to allow us to be more successful. But when we fail, like I did in that particular instance, it has an impact on the company, it has an impact on the other employees, it has an impact on our customers, and for me, it had an impact where I was actually let go and not able to work. So I spent a lot of time trying to understand, investigating failures, looking at my own extensive repertoire. And when I did that research, what I found was that even though I thought I was the pharaoh of failure at that time, failures everywhere. 70% of IT projects fail. 17% of projects that are over $10 million fail so badly they almost cause the collapse of the company. 80 to 90% of businesses fail, depending on what statistics you look at. 95% of startups fail. So failure is everywhere. And when you look at the reasons why things fail, they fail for some pretty simple things that we could actually avoid if we only thought about it and did something differently. 42% of startup companies, 95% of startup companies fail. 42% of them, and it's the top reason, fail for one thing. Does anybody know what that is? Number one reason, according to the research by Fortune? No market for the product. Let me just repeat those numbers, because at first glance they might be a little bit startling. 42% fail because there's no market for the product. So if you're going to develop a product, it might be worthwhile thinking, is there a market for it? My Weetabix overcoat, which I think will be a winner, maybe I should go and ask, would anybody want to buy this before I start building a production plant and going into full production? So when I did this analysis and investigation, what I found was there were 4 key reasons why the majority of initiatives fail. And this is what I want to talk about, and these are the pillars of FAST. This is focus. We don't know what our goal and objective looks like. When I went to university, my goal was to go to university. It should have been to come out of university. The second one is about accountability. Who's involved? Do they know? Have we communicated it to them? Have we got clear expectations? Do we know how we're going to hold them accountable? And are we holding them accountable for outcomes? The S of FAST is about simplicity. We have a world-class ability to overcomplicate things. And when we do that, Tony Robbins says that complexity is the enemy of execution. I disagree with him. I think complexity kills execution. So we need to make sure we can keep things as simple as possible. And then the last part of FAST is transparency. And transparency is about knowing what's involved, so we have a clear picture of what we need to do, so we don't commit to a project that we can't succeed at before we start. And then tracking and tracing our performance as we go through. And FAST is a framework. It works with Lean, it works with Six Sigma. I've used it in companies. I've used it in one company where we saved 350 million over 7 years from the operational cost. I've used it to drive performance improvements ranging from 50 to 500%. And I've even used it to get a fat 52-year-old to run his first marathon, even though he'd never done any running at all. But we'll talk about that a little bit later as we go. So I want to go through FAST with you, and I'm going to go through it fast because there's a lot of depth to it, but I'm going to give you a kind of a taster for it, and with most of you being in the operational expert and excellence and business transformation, it's probably going to make a lot of sense to you and you understand it. So I'm going to start with focus. Focus is the what. What's our goal? What's our objective? What does success look like? Are we sure we've got the right what established? I worked for a company and our goal was to implement Six Sigma. We implemented Six Sigma. We didn't really get any benefits out of it because our goal should have been to drive operational performance improvements, drive costs down, not just the implementation of Six Sigma. We need to be clear about what it is we're trying to do. We need to know what success looks like. We need to make sure that we have that right focus, because if we have the wrong focus, we end up doing the wrong job. And when you're focused on doing the wrong thing, the only thing that's going to happen is the harder you work, the longer you work, the more effort you put in, the more frustrated you're going to get because you are not going to be successful. And there's a number of reasons why we lose our focus. It can be that a lot of us are working under strict time pressures and everybody's faster, better, cheaper, and we're asked to dive in and get started. But when we do that, we can often misinterpret what the goal and the objective is, and that can then have us going down the wrong path, and when we're doing that, we're set up to fail. Einstein says if he had an hour to save the world, he'd spend 55 minutes understanding the problem and then 5 minutes solving it. In a lot of the businesses I've worked in, we get 1 minute to understand the problem, and then we get about 59 minutes to just try and solve it. And then we're moving to being busy rather than productive, and it allows us 12, thank you. So transparency is my dear colleague here letting me know how much time I've spoken for. So, And we need to make sure that we've got the right number of priorities. A lot of time we fail because we've got too many priorities, and when everything's a priority, nothing is a priority. In my last job, my boss said to me, "Gordon, here are your 6 number 1 priorities." Thanks for that, Peter. Because when time comes short, I'm only going to be able to focus on one thing. And if I pick the wrong one, now I'm doing the wrong job, now I'm going to fail, I'm going to get frustrated and demotivated. And it's our job as leaders to make that step back and make sure that we're focused on the right thing. Peter Drucker says management is about doing things right. Leadership is about making sure we're doing the right things. And what can happen when we get things wrong? Does anybody know this failure? French trains, 150 million feedback. So in France, they spent $15 billion upgrading the trains. First 341 of 2,000 trains delivered ahead of schedule. They're fantastic, they're absolutely beautiful, they're fast, they're sleek. There was just one problem with these trains. They would not pass through 1,800 of the 2,000 stations in France. Now, one of the objectives of this project was to make the trains bigger. Nobody knew how big was too big. And this is going to cost them $150 million to put right. And when you do that, you put yourself in a situation where now your company's getting ridiculed, in which case this was France, and everybody in England, Germany, Belgium, Holland, Italy, Spain, we had a good old chuckle at that. The French even laughed at it themselves. There was a cartoon in the French daily newspaper, and it said, "Will the passengers on platform 3 please breathe in? Your train is arriving." Now, as an English person, we've had 1,000 years of conflict with France, so you're probably thinking I've just pulled one out about the French. But actually, this has happened multiple times. The Australian Navy spent $40 million building landing craft that do not fit on any ship in their fleet. My uncle Colin, he worked as a quantity surveyor in the building trade. Where I'm from in Yorkshire, we have short hours and very deep pockets. We don't like to spend our own money. And my uncle decided he would build his own garage, so he measured his car, and he built the garage based on that measurement. The car goes in the garage, the car comes out of the garage. You can't drive it in and get out. Now the good news is, it is probably the nicest closet I've ever seen. But this is what can happen when we have the wrong focus. So we need to make sure we have a clear picture of what success looks like. And we need to have that focus right. And there are 3 tips. I've got lots of them, but I'm just going to go through the 3 of them really quickly. We need to have clearly defined goals and objectives. We need to know what success looks like. We need to keep our goals to a minimum. For me, no more than 3, ideally 1. And when I tell people that, they say, you can't just have 3 goals. I work for a company, $20 billion, 48,000 employees. We had 3 goals for our 4-year strategy. Everybody in the company understood what those goals was. Why did we do that? Because we wanted everybody pulling in the same direction. When you've got everybody pulling in the same direction, and it's the right direction, that's when you're going to get traction and start to make improvements. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we communicate our goals clearly and often. I can't tell you the number of companies I consult with where only the board and the next level of management down know what the goals are. We need to make sure that our teams know so that they can make the right decision at the right time on what to focus on. So that's focus. The A of accountability, FAST, is accountability. And accountability is about the who. Who's doing the work? Do we have clear roles and responsibilities? Have we communicated it to the person that's going to do the work? Do we have expectations for that? And are we holding them accountable for outcomes? Because when we don't do that, we can end up with the wrong person doing the wrong job. And when that happens, we're going to put ourselves in a position to fail. Now, accountability and creating a culture of accountability is crucial to being successful. And a lot of people shy away from holding people accountable. And when we do that, we're putting ourselves into a difficult position because we need that clarity of roles and responsibility, and we need to be holding people and reviewing their performance so we can be saying, good job, well done, or not so good, how can I help you and move you forward? And a lot of people don't want to do that. They're worried about creating a blame culture. But as leaders, we have to think of accountability not as finger pointing and blame, but as a supportive act. As leaders, it's our job to put people into a position where they can be successful. So when we review the performance and the progress, what do you need from me in order to help you? And if you create the culture of blame, what can happen with that is that when you blame people, you push away the ability to do something about it. If I say this is your fault, I'm abdicating my involvement with that. If I abdicate involvement, I can't do anything to fix it. And this is an example of two companies, and I won't name them because sometimes the people that work for them get a little bit embarrassed, but there were two companies in a country in Europe. The train company had an issue with on-time arrival of their trains. Second company, which was the airline company of that country, were having difficulty with on-time arrival. The train company made the decision to fire the CEO. Clear message, this is your job, you should have fixed it, you haven't. Clear message to the person coming in to get them to take ownership of it. The CEO of the airline company took a completely different approach. And really want to guess who he blamed for the late arrival of their planes? Now, pilots would have been a great idea, but no. I mean, a lot of these things fell for stupid reasons. He sent a letter to the passengers saying, please turn up on time, you're delaying our aircraft. Now, when you blame other people, you take away your ability to do something about it. So we need to make sure we take accountability, because that puts us in a position to start fixing it. And 3 tips for increasing accountability: clear roles and expectations that we communicate to our teams. We need to hold people accountable for outcomes, not for following processes. I was in Germany and we'd had 6 days of torrential rain. 7th day, beautiful blue skies, not a cloud in sight. It was 82 degrees and I'm driving to work, and there's a guy from Parks and Recreation in boots, stood in 6 inches of water, watering plants that were in 6 inches of water. And for me, that looked a little bit odd. So when I went into my office, I asked my German colleagues what's going on, and they said, well, it's the rule in where we live in Germany. If it's 80 degrees or more, you have to water the plants. But this is what happens when you hold people accountable for following process. We need to hold people accountable for outcomes. Give them an opportunity to say this process isn't working and fix it. And then lastly, for accountability, we need to be accountable ourselves. Starts with us. If we don't hold ourselves accountable, it makes it difficult to hold our teams accountable. So accountability starts with us. We have to be accountable, and then we can hold others accountable. And when you've got the right person doing the right job, that's where you start to really build your effectiveness. So the next part of FAST is simplicity. And simplicity is about the how. And we have a world-class ability to overcomplicate things. As I said, for me, complexity isn't the enemy of execution, it kills it stone dead. And who are the worst people in the world for creating complexity? It starts with E and it ends in spurts. Experts. Experts are world-class at creating complexity. It's almost as if they feel that every complex solution needs an even more complicated answer. And I used to think that this was them trying to prove their value, their worth. But I don't even think it's that. I just think it's the way they want to use their expertise. And when we get into a situation where we have a problem with complexity, as I say, it kills execution, and when we can't see how things are going to work, it stops us from performing. And I learned this at an early age. I was 16, it was back in 1976, probably the warmest summer on record in England, and my dad's boss, my dad worked for British Telecoms, and his boss was a master's, PhD in electrical engineering. He wanted to go on holiday to France. Spoke some French, but he didn't think his French was good enough to be able to do the booking, because this was 76, no email, no online booking. The only way to do it was to send a letter. Now you're involved in the English and the French postal systems. Don't do that. Don't do that. Pick up the phone and call. So he was telling my dad, and my dad said, well, Gordon's 16, he's studying French, we'll get him in. So I went in, and my dad's boss said to me, I want to book the first 2 weeks in August. Are you able to say that in French? Absolutely. I'm 16, I can do anything. You've got to know who you're dealing with, really, don't you? And he said, can you ask him, are there any special arrangements that we need to make? And I said, yeah, I can do that. So he dialed the number, handed me the phone, and I'm waiting for it to ring. And a lady comes on the phone and she says, bonjour. And I said, bonjour, parlez-vous anglais? And she says, yeah, I am English. And I said, brilliant. Could I book the first 2 weeks in August? But when we... True story. My dad is still my dad's 85, he's still laughing at that. 24. Yeah, my dad's still laughing at that. When we were doing that story, my dad's boss is going scarlet. Me and my dad are trying not to laugh. I failed not to laugh. But this is what happens when we think that something's too complicated. It can actually stop us from trying to do it. And when we've got teams, we need to make sure that we communicate to them how we're going to do things. Because when people can see how we are going to be successful, it gives them confidence, and they can move forward and at least try to do it. If you don't think you're going to be successful, you have 2 options. You can work really, really hard and fail, or you can sit by the pool drinking pina coladas and fail. I'm in that second group. Anybody else with me? And as I said, I've used FAST to run a marathon, my first marathon at 52. And when I told my 2 best friends, I have no running experience, I'm going to run a marathon in 6 months' time, they were ridiculously supportive. They said, hang on, you're too fat, you're too old, you're too unfit, this is never going to happen. Forget it. I said, but I've got a simple plan. Week 1, I run for 15 minutes. They said, okay, buy oxygen, you can do that. Week 2, I'm just going to run for 20 minutes. Week 3, I'm going to run for 25 minutes. Week 4, I'll run for 30 minutes. And they said, look, if you're just going to run 5 minutes longer, we'll do it with you. Because they could see how, by slicing the elephant, how we could go from not being runners at all to completing a marathon. So we've got to be able to communicate to our teams simply how we're going to do things. Now, that explanation didn't make the marathon go from 26 miles to 6 miles. It was still a difficult thing, but we could see how we were going to be successful. And we need to make sure that we can communicate things, even if they are difficult and hard, in a way that people will understand them. Because when we understand it, we believe it. When we believe it, it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And we're going to get a much more buy-in. One of the comments I heard over these 2 days was, how do you get senior management to buy in to things like Six Sigma and Lean? You do it by explaining it to them clearly and simply, so that they can understand. And as I said, one of the worst groups for overcomplicating things are experts. I spent 28 years working in IT, and every time I used to ask my team, so I don't know anything about networking, but I'm in charge of networks. So how are we going to do this project? They would say, you don't know enough about networking, you're not going to understand it. Or if I asked about data centers, they would say, you don't know enough about that, you're not going to understand it. Again, I like Einstein. And Einstein says, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it. So now, don't tell me I don't understand it. Explain it to me so a 6-year-old can understand it. And if you can do that, brilliant, I can understand it. If you can't do that, there's one of two things. You don't understand it, in which case, thank you very much, we'll get somebody in who can, or you cannot explain it. And if you've got people who cannot explain to your teams how we are going to be successful, it's not going to work. So we need to make sure we have clarity around simplicity. So these are 3 things for simplicity. We need to challenge our teams to create simple solutions. And simple can be in the way we explain it. And I also tell my teams, how many people know the story about NASA and the pen? So the story about NASA and the pen, it's an apocryphal story. Does anybody know what apocryphal means? It's a complicated way of saying not true. So it's not true, but it's a great trade, and this is a story about NASA. Their pens didn't write in 0 gravity. They got all the pen experts together. They spent $1 billion 1 year, and they came up with a pen that works in 0 gravity because they were brilliant. The Russians weren't as brilliant, so they used a pencil. So it's not a true story, but I always tell this to my teams. If I find out that we spent $1 billion in a year building a pen, when the pencil solution was available, I'm not going to be as nice and charming as I normally am. So keep looking for that pencil solution. Complex solutions are dead easy to find. Complex solutions are everywhere. Simple solutions require a little bit more hard work for us to go and look for them. A second thing we need to do for complexity, a lot of people already know this one with Six Sigma and Lean. If anything's not needed, just challenge it and just rip it out. But this also goes to our management approaches as well. I worked on a program for DHL where we wanted to save 20 million from our hardware budget. And every time somebody came up with an idea, and these were the guys that were in the data center, the engineers, we said, here you are, here's a 28-page business case, fill that in, and once you've done that, we'll look at your idea. Not going to happen. So we ended up creating a 1-page document that said, tell me what you're going to do, tell me what you need in terms of money and time, and tell me what I'm going to get back for it. By simplifying that process, I had one person come to me and say, we've got 3 mainframes that cost us $1 million each. We're only using 66% of each of them. With a few bits of tweaking, we can buy some additional hardware and we can send back one of the mainframes, and we will save $1 million, and it'll take us 3 months to do it. And I said, why haven't we done this before? He said, I don't know how to fill in the 28-page business case. So from a management perspective, rip out a lot of that complexity. And then the last thing I like to do is I like to use what I call the Pareto approach. Don't try and improve the process that's in place. Imagine you've only got 20% of the time available and ask yourself, how would I do it now? Throw out the current approach and ask yourself, how would I do it now? Let's try and do it in 20% of the time. You might find a solution, you might not, but get your mind thinking in that way. And as I say, I think a lot of you that do the Lean and Six Sigma are probably doing that already. Last part of FAST is about transparency, and transparency is about 2 things, truth and knowledge. The truth of the knowledge as to what's involved. Gartner says that on average projects cost 3 times as much as the original estimate. And this is because projects are like icebergs. We can see the third above the water. I don't know if you know this, it's the 2/3 under the water that sink the ship. So we need to be able to understand completely what's involved, so we're not getting involved in projects that are doomed to failure before the start. And it was great to see people showing how long their journey was to implement things like Lean and Six Sigma. That it took them 3, 4, 5 years. Because when you know that beforehand, you don't commit to doing it in 3 months. Because when you do that, you're going to fail. And then the second part about transparency is the truth. How are we really performing? Don't tell me what we've done, tell me what we've achieved. We need to have visibility into are we delivering the outcomes we've committed to. Because when we have that, we can see the progress, and if it's going well, we can say, good job, well done. If not, what do we need to do about it? And there's tons of data around big data, data analytics. Find a way to get real-time data onto the performance. the reason we need this is because when we've got that performance, and what I like to do is I like to create very simple charts just showing where we're going to be after 10%, 20%, 30% of the project so we can see how we're doing. And I put this up because if we have visibility in our performance, it stops us from snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. I did my first marathon, I ran it in 5 hours, 12 minutes. I did my second marathon in 5 hours, 8 minutes. I did my third marathon in 5 hours, 4 minutes. And I decided that I wanted to set a goal of running a marathon in under 5 hours. And I had the opportunity to run in Athens, from Marathon to Athens and finish at the Olympic Stadium. And I thought, if I'm going to do the under 5 hours, this is the place to do it. So I did my due diligence, I had a look at it, and I don't know how many people know this, but the Athens Marathon, it's not Olympic, they didn't run the Olympics, it's not a prepared course, it's just the route from Marathon to Athens. And from mile 6 to mile 20, it's uphill. Yeah, I wish I'd known that before I went looking at under 5 hours. So I took that into account and I looked to see what the average time was, and people took on average 20 minutes longer to do a marathon in Athens. So I thought, okay, I need to train myself to run in 4 hours 4 hours 39 and 59 seconds, and if I can do that, then I'm going to be able to complete the marathon. So I knew I needed to be after 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and went in with my plan, and after an hour I'm on schedule. After 2 hours I'm starting to go uphill. I'm just about on schedule, a little bit behind, but I'm okay with that. After 3 hours, same thing. 4 hours, I'm at the top of the hill, and I'm about a minute behind schedule. Now it's downhill for 6 miles. I'm feeling fantastic. I've got 6 miles to go, and I've got 5 miles to go, and I've got about an hour to do it. And I'm comfortable with doing this. And then 15 minutes later, disaster struck. The battery on my iPhone died. So I've no longer got Eye of the Tiger on the loop. And all the words if you want me to finish with that. And I use a technique called Galloway, which is an interesting technique. It's called run-walk. You run for 3 minutes and you walk for a minute. Now, it's 78 degrees of heat. I've just run 23 miles, and now I'm having to walk and count in my head to 180 while I'm running. So it's, what do they want me to do? And then when I'm walking, 1, 2. But I've got 45 minutes and 3 miles. I've got 15 minutes a mile. I've got every chance of doing this, so I'm confident and I go for it. And I cross the line in 5 hours and 9 seconds. Pull that spear out of my chest. And this is because I didn't have the visibility into my performance. I didn't need to high-five all 5,000 people down that last mile. I didn't need to have that second latte at Starbucks at mile 20. But without that visibility into my performance, I managed to plug defeat from the jaws of victory. The good news is, 8 weeks later, I ran in Fort Lauderdale, and I did it in 4 hours 53. But telling people I did my fastest marathon in Fort Lauderdale doesn't sound as good as I did it in Athens over the original course. So we need to make sure that we have visibility into our performance. We need to make sure that we've done the due diligence so we know what's involved, what we need to do, and we do not commit to things that can't be done. One of my favourite words is impossible, because it's a true word. It is impossible. We cannot do it. We can do the improbable, but the impossible cannot be done, so we mustn't commit to it. Second thing is we need to create a plan of our progress. What are the outcomes we're expecting? Don't tell me what you've done. I've run 23 miles. Tell me where we are. Are we on schedule? Because when we do that, I can know whether we need to make adjustments, whether we need to slow down, speed up, whether we're on track. And then the last thing we need to do is we need to communicate our progress to our teams. When we communicate the progress, it allows us to motivate them by showing them how well they've done. And when you look at things like some of these Six Sigma and Lean implementations, they can be 2 to 3 years long. Sometimes it's a real slog, and what we need to do, like on a marathon, they tell you how many miles you've run at every single mile. They show you the progress you're making because it's motivating, and we need to communicate back to our teams on a regular basis how well we are doing. So that's FAST, that's my framework for driving change, and it works for cost reduction, operational performance, getting fat people to run marathons. It's a very powerful tool. When you use it, it gets teams engaged, and they can see the performance, it gets them excited. And what's really good about it is the interoperability between the words. The simpler you make it, the easier it is to focus. The more transparency you've got into performance, the easier it is to hold people accountable. If you don't have visibility into performance, what are you holding them accountable for? A lot of people ask me, of the 4, which one should I start with? Well, should I need to do all of them? Well, if you can fail because of an absence of one of them, you need to do all 4. Then people ask me, which one should I start with? And there's 2 answers to that. One is if you've got an ongoing initiative, for each of the 4 areas, score yourself out of 5 for how well you're doing. And the one you score lowest in, start with that. If it's a new initiative, start with focus. Because if you do not know what you're doing, you do not know who's involved, and it's going to be impossible to figure out how you're going to do it. So it all starts with focus. So when you go back and have a look at your programs and projects, ask yourself, am I being fast? Do I know what success looks like? Have I communicated to the people who are involved what their role is, what my expectation of them is? Have I got a simple plan that they understand and they're bought into? The research shows that 75% of the people on projects that failed knew it was going to fail day 1. Maybe it would be Hovers to ask them, do you think this will be successful? And lastly, have I done the due diligence, and do I know how I'm going to track and manage that performance? And if you take the FAST approach, it will help you significantly improve your operational performance. My name is Tredgold, and that's my FAST approach. Thank you.